Hello, and thanks again for sending in your questions about our recent sermon or even anything that you saw in the service. We love interacting with all of you in this way and seeing how you are engaging with what we are saying. Thank you so much for participating. Our question this week has to do with Easter. Since this last week we just celebrated Easter as a church. And the question is it appropriate for Christians to celebrate Easter with the Easter bunny or Easter eggs? And I'll say this is a little bit more complicated than you might think just at first glance. Some people are like, of course it's fine, it's just a fun thing that kids do. Other people might say, of course it's not fine, this has these pagan roots and it could be tied to all kind of odd things from ancient times of ways that people celebrated the changing of the seasons. And so what I want to look at is in the scriptures, Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians 10. In Romans 14, Paul is talking about whether it's okay to eat meat or celebrate certain times a year, certain festivals. And in 1 Corinthians 10, Paul is talking about eating food that has been sacrificed to idols. And in both cases, Paul comes up with the same answer. He says, objectively, there's nothing wrong with this. If you want to eat meat, even if you eat food that has been sacrificed to an idol, that you're buying it in a marketplace, there's nothing wrong with the actual thing. God made all of creation. It's all good. You can participate. But then he says, and this is the surprising part, he says, if what you are doing causes distress to somebody else, this is verse 15 of Romans 14, then you're not acting in love and you should just drop it. Or over in 1 Corinthians 10, he says, if you're at the house of an unbeliever and that person says, hey, this food has been sacrificed to an idol, he says, for the sake of that person's conscience, don't eat it. Like for your conscience, you know it's okay. It's just food. But for the sake of that person's conscience, don't eat it. So there is a deferring to the other instead of a deferring to what is objectively true. That's the surprising part. Paul doesn't say you should just talk to the person and get them on board with what is objectively true. He doesn't say, hey, the person who thinks that you can't eat meat, just try to convince them that it's okay to eat meat because it is okay. He says, if it's causing them distress, then you're not acting out of love and you should drop it. Or if he says, if you're eating with an unbeliever and that person says the food has been sacrificed to an idol, don't eat it for the sake of their conscience. In other words, don't try to convince them, hey, this is just food. I know the God who made all the food, who made everything in the world. I can give thanks to him while I'm eating this food. It's like, don't try to convince them of that. Just defer to them. So we're coming back to the Easter bunny. Objectively, God made all of creation. He made bunnies. He made eggs. We can use that to celebrate the resurrection if that's what it means to us, right? Like these are kind of pictures, although not really, of new life. That's the idea. And so we're like, sure, it's kind of a fun thing for kids to do and go on an Easter egg hunt. But if you're around somebody, say you invite some people over to your house for an Easter egg hunt, and it's causing them distress, don't do it, right? Drop it. Say, you know what, we're just going to put all this away. And then maybe you and your kids do it later. Paul would say, don't try to just convince that person that what you're doing is objectively okay. Even though it is objectively okay, you defer to that person. You love that person. You say, I'm not going to cause you distress over this. It's not worth it. Hope that's helpful to all of you, and we thank you again for sending in your questions.